Welcome back, everyone. I'm Marco from NYC Uprooted. Today I thought we'd do a propagation video, propagating a few different types of plants in different methods. Just, to give you guys all some information on how I do it and what different ways there are to do it. So let's get into it. Today I'm going to be propagating Monstera Addisonia. So this used to be a hanging plant. I had it as a hanging plant and it was producing very small leaves for me, like really tiny. So it was like, I'm going to train it to go up a totem. So I stuck a piece of wood in there. And it's lost a lot of leaves from the bottom, but the top has crazy growth. It's outgrown the totem by a lot and now it's hanging again. So what I want to do is cut off the top to see if I can get some of these nodes to activate so that it can become bushier in the bottom. So that it's a prettier plant. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to chop some of that off. This is a fibrosum, a philodendron fibrosum that I unboxed in my Equigenera unboxing video, and it's not doing too good, right? So like I said, this leaf was probably gonna go, and it is. So what I want to do today is remove this leaf and then just propagate the two nodes that I have and do those in I'm doing the Addisonia in water. The fibrosum is gonna go in perlite. And lastly, I have this jungle boogie that's looking it's just a little too wide for my liking. So we're gonna take, I think, a couple cuttings of this and propagate it in moss. So here I have a water bowl, and this is just a water bowl with a little bit of liquid dirt in it, because I just find that it helps to root cuttings. If you want 25% off your liquid dirt order, I'm actually gonna link everything that I used today, even the pots and stuff, in the description, and there'll also be a 25% off code for liquid dirt if you want to order from them. So this is the moss that I use. I use sphagnum moss, and I buy it in these little tablets that come dehydrated, so it's easier to store. And then I just saw off a piece with a knife every time I want to use some. So you just literally, it works better if you rip it in pieces, because it lets the moss get wet quicker. And then you just throw it in the water and it'll hydrate while we make the cuttings. Just make sure that it's in there. All right, so let's stop. And let's start, I guess we're gonna start with the Addisonia. So I just wanna get rid of some of these vines that are hanging off of the top. You see some of it grows erect like this, but then after it gets a little too long and heavy, it starts to droop down, which is fine. I do like the look of this, but I do want the bottom to be fuller. So I'm gonna cut these off to promote those node growths. So you wanna find, okay, let me show you. So between leaves, you have this stem space, and then there's a node on the other side of each of these leaves. So I'm gonna cut in between here when I make the big cut, and then I'll cut leaflets afterward. So I'm just gonna cut below the top of the totem so that the new growth, so this is one of the cuttings, so that the new growth, when it does start popping, it doesn't quite start at the top of the totem already. It kind of starts a little lower, and then, by the time it puts out a couple leaves, it should reach the top, but not right away, Oh, that one's good. Time. All right. So I think that's enough. I think these are the only ones that were hanging back down. So these are our cuttings, and from here we're gonna make a bunch of leaflets and put them in water. So now what we do is you see the leaf, you see the node down here, so we can make a cut here and make that its own plant. like that. See the node there. And we're gonna repeat that for all of these. So some people like to cut in between the stem and then just leave that for each. But I find that that's a lot of stem and it doesn't need it. It's not gonna do anything for your plant. Aside from just insurance from rot, because if it does rot, you wanna leave a little bit of space, you know, so that it doesn't rot the node or the root. But it doesn't need to be that long. Like this is perfectly fine. Sometimes I go even a little shorter than this on each side. It'll be alright. And then the top, this is the top cutting. You see it there? I don't quite trust this to root, so I'll leave this other leaf on it, and then I do leave the stem a little long on that because for rot insurance. So that was one. Let's keep going. So now we have all of our leaflets cut. A little bouquet of Addisonia. Glass jar. I like to sort of arrange them before I put them in the jar, because after they go in there, it's hard to like keep pushing, and then like the stems will push on each other and it's hard to arrange them. So I like to put them in a good formation to begin with, so then I just stick them in there and I don't have to like wrestle the other ones to fit cuttings in there, if that makes any sense. Just make them look pretty, kind of like in a window formation, you know. How many more do we have? Here we go. All right, so these are Addisonia cuttings. And I just make sure that the bottoms are kind of even so that I know that all of that is gonna be underwater. All of the cuts and the nodes will be underwater. Because if you leave, oh, this is not gonna fit. Okay, so I'm gonna have to split this in two. I'm actually gonna take where the fibrosum was, I'll take that out. But if you leave some higher than others and the water doesn't reach the ones that are higher, those will end up dying. They need to be in the water to sprout roots and to stay alive after being cut. So, there we go. Put those in there, like that. This is water with liquid dirt. Oh no, this was a mistake. There's more water coming out, going into the jar. So this is what it looks like. There's one. I am making a huge mess. So this is what they look like. And I'm gonna go get something to dry this up really quickly. All right. Moving on to the fibrosum. So this leaf is really yellow. This has to go. It should just snap if I like pull it backwards here. There you go. It's a clean cut. It gets rid of all the stem. Which if you leave some of the petiole, not the stem. If you leave some of the petiole attached to this, that is gonna rot, and that could bring pests. And it could rot the rest of your stump. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you get as much of that petiole out as possible. No dead leaf matter. All right. So then I have a node here and a node here, and then all of the stem in between. So I'm going to cut about there for this one. and about here for this one. Right? So we have these, and then the ends of them I'm not gonna cut because they're already calloused, so I don't want to make another fresh cut and then it's 2 fresh cuts when I could just have 1 on each, which will give it a better chance. So these are my fibrosum nodes, and these are gonna go in perlite. Perlite propagation is something that I just started doing recently, and it's been working well, really well so far. So these are little 2-inch plastic pots, plastic nurseries. And what you want to do is grab some perlite, this is just regular perlite, and you want to fill it up with perlite. Like that. And you want to grab your node this way, and you want to stick it in there, and that's it. Right, so I'm going to do that again. Yeah, this was, don't pour, just scoop up the perlite. This is way better and less mess. This way. So you just stick it in there in the center. That's it. Right? So now we grab a little saucer and we place our perlite propagations in there, and you need to put it in a saucer because you want 1/3 of the pot to be covered in water. So you're gonna pour water in this until the bottom third of the pot is covered. And what's gonna happen is the perlite is gonna wick the water up to the plant, and it's gonna produce that root. And it also allows a lot of air to get to the plant and to the roots, which I find that makes it root much quicker. Right? So we're just gonna put water until 1/3 of the pot is covered. Now. And the perlite is just gonna wick that water up for us. So that one is done. And lastly, we have the jungle boogie. All right. So this jungle boogie, I'm thinking of cutting this top cutting around here. This is where the root will form. And then this one already has a node there. That's where it'll push out the new growth from. So I'm gonna cut down about here. And I'm gonna try to do that in a very skillful way where I don't cut any other leaf off. Because these leaves are very tight to the stem of the plant. Well, the top is an easy cut. This one's gonna be an easy cut. But the second one, there we go. Cut it there, it has an aerial root. Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that's a strong smell. That smells familiar. What is that? It kind of smells like ginger. I've never had a plant smell like, oh wow, look at that. Stripping there, see that? The little jungle boogie juice. Don't drink it though, probably die. But this smells very interesting. It smells kind of like ginger or like turmeric. Ooh. Yeah, I should stop sniffing that. All right, this one's gonna be a little tricky because I don't want to cut too much or too little. There we go. I think that'll be fine, hopefully. See the node there, the aerial root. Jungle boogie. Alright, so that's that cutting, and this is the top cutting with the new growth. It's a little jacked up, but you know what? We're gonna take it. Alright, so these are gonna go in the moss that we've been moistening, which now looks like this. break that apart. And now, with moss, you want to make sure that your moss is wet and it's saturated in water, but you don't want it to be soggy or dripping, because I find that that doesn't work for me. It ends up killing my cuttings, it rots them. Also, you want to make sure that you're putting it loosely in there, tight enough to hold your cutting, but loose enough that it's not compacted around the cutting, because if your cutting can't get any air at all, it's gonna rot. So I'm gonna be using these 4-inch net pots for the Jungle Boogie cuttings. And what you wanna do is wring out the moss enough where it's not dripping wet, but it's still wet, you know, it's still moist. And then you wanna cover the bottom. And like I said, you don't wanna make it too tight, too compacted in there where it's not gonna get any breathability. You're gonna take your cutting, you're gonna place that in the center there, a little pocket, and you're gonna finish it up with some moist moss. Hold that in place. And then you wanna make sure while it's developing roots, you wanna make sure that you keep this moss moist at all times. If your cutting doesn't have roots and your moss dries out, I'm not saying right away, but it will kill your cutting if your cutting does not have moisture. A little bit more there. All right, so that's our first one. And we're gonna do the same for the second. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a moment in history. I want you to know that I used the perfect amount of moss for this. There will be no wet moss left over this time. Something that happens to me all the time. I either make too little moss and then I have to make more, and then I make too much and have left over. I just make too much from the beginning. So this is our second cutting and moss. And we're done. So we have our Addisonia in water. Our fibrosum in perlite. And our Jungle Boogie in moss. These are really big, so can't really fit them in the shop unless I move all the way back. There you have it. So thank you for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions. Follow me on Instagram at NYC Uprooted. I'm going to list everything I used in the description below. I think that's it. So have a good one.